Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Oasis Church International and Oasis Community Development Centers, our mental health podcast this month. It is on transitioning from high school to college and mental health. Now, as I was getting prepared for this evening, I thought about, me putting just college there. There's so many avenues that our young people transition to. So it could be college, it could be to the military, some type of trade school, going away to pursue their education, or just their next step or phase in life in general. So we're going to discuss this. I am Lisa Nicholson. I am the mental health coordinator at Oasis Church International and Oasis Community Development Center. And I give honor to our senior pastor, Pastor Cassandra V. Fullwood, for allowing us to actually be a part of this whole mental health community and be able to bring this to the masses. So I ask you to please invite someone to this podcast if you are watching. We want to bring in our young people. We want to bring in parents. We have such an awesome host. I'm the host and I am awesome, but we have such an awesome guest on this evening. And her name is Jessica Ncube. She is a licensed clinical social worker, a therapist, counselor. She is amazing. Some of you may have heard me mention her name before, but this is an amazing young lady, and I'm honored to bring in Jessica Ncube.
Hello.
Hey, Jessica, how are you?
How are you?
Good. So I have finally got you on our podcast.
Ooh, I am here. I have arrived.
I know. So I'm just going to go ahead and just let everyone know this is my therapist. Many of you who have followed me for years now know I talk a lot about my mental health and the importance of having a therapist and how I have such an awesome therapist. This is she. This is her. This is Miss Jessica Ncube. She's live here in color.
A real person, live in the flesh.
Exactly. Again, so nice to have you here. And when I thought about this topic, you were the first person I thought about because I know that you are so successful in your career, and you're still a young woman, and if anyone would know about transitioning, from high school to college and pursuing your career, it would be you, and you can speak about it.
For sure.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you just to introduce yourself. If you could just also add your career path in there as well.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jessica Ncube. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field for over, I might tell my age, 13 years. I am originally from Tallahassee, Florida. Go Noles. And I have been in the West Palm Beach area for over 13 years. I started my private practice about 8 years ago. And we do individual counseling, couples counseling, and family counseling. But before that, believe it or not, Lisa, I don't know if you know this about me, but my undergrad was in child development. So before I actually became a therapist, I was a teacher.
Awesome. I did not know.
Yes, so I was a teacher when I was working through my undergrad program. My mom was actually the director of the Head Start program, which is government assisted program. So she was the head of that. And so while I was doing my undergrad at Florida State in child development, I was subbing with the Head Start program. And then once I graduated with my bachelor's in child development, I became a teacher. So I was a teacher for the 3-year-old classroom and the 4-year-old classroom.
Okay.
Teachers, God bless y'all. And I realized that was not my ministry. kids were my ministry, but just not in that capacity. And they actually have a mental health department with the Head Start program. So I would see this lady come in and like visit and like work with the kids that were having some behavioral issues. And I was looking like, what is her job? Because I think I would like to do that, to come work with the kids for a good little hour and then go on about my way. So then I started exploring like her department, and she was able to mentor me, which led me to my graduate program in the College of Social Work at Florida State. I just can't get enough of Tallahassee for some reason. So I did my graduate program at Florida State, and it's so important to have good advisors, because honestly, if it was not for my advisor helping me transition from my undergraduate degree in child development, I probably would have been a psychology major, and no offense to psychology majors. But the thing about that is you have to get your PhD if you really want to do something. So I was so grateful for my advisor that steered me, because I knew I wanted to do counseling. I just didn't know what umbrella, and there's so many umbrellas to go under. I think psychology is a good buzzword. So I was like, oh, I want to go in psychology. But like I said, my advisor was very transparent and honest with me and said, you know what? Yeah, you could do that if you want to get your PhD. And that was not my ministry either. So my options at that point were mental health counseling or social work. And because I was working full time, social work was more compatible with my schedule. With mental health counseling, they have their track already set. So you have to take as many classes, like it's already laid out, so you couldn't work full time. So that's how I went into my graduate program as a social worker. It has a stigma attached to it of like pushing papers and taking kids.
Right.
I've never done any of the above. I have stayed on my clinical track. So did that for 2 years, and then it takes another 2 years to be under a qualified supervisor to get your license. And then I became licensed, and now I'm a qualified supervisor.
All right.
That's my version of who I am.
That is so awesome. We have Pastor San. She put in Go Noles.
I saw that.
Yes, she's a graduate from Florida State. And my husband over here, I'm sure, having a fit because he's all about the Canes.
Yes, look, all the love is allowed, but
exactly.
Yeah.
So such a very interesting career path. So what led you to start your own practice?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Where did you start?
So before I started my own practice, I was doing community mental health. And anybody that knows a little bit of something of being in a community in any capacity, you know it's not for the faint of heart. So I actually encourage therapists that are coming out of school to go into community mental health, because it's almost like a hazing. It almost like allows you to develop tough skin, which I think is needed, because just the work that we do, we absorb a lot of emotions. So you have to sort of develop a little grit to be able to sustain. So I started off actually in Tallahassee, working for an agency that only focused on kids. Like I said, I love the kids, just not for 6 hours a day. So, so I was working for an agency in the community doing mental health, which was a great experience. Some of it was pretty heavy and pretty intense, but ultimately it was a great experience. So then I ended up moving down to West Palm, got involved with another community mental health agency. In between, I was married, had a baby, and then I was ready to go back to work. So that's what it was. So I moved down to West Palm, was ready to go back to work. And honestly, and I guess this is a little testimony. I didn't think I was going to be preaching today, but credit does go to God. Seriously, I came down here. I thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I realized that wasn't my ministry either. So I applied for a job, and honestly, I do not recall applying for a supervisor position. However, I got interviewed for a supervisor position. I didn't think I was ready because I was still kind of, wet behind the ears. However, when it's a God thing, it's not about you.
Yes.
Right? So I went on the interview, and they literally hired me on the spot. So I was now a supervisor at a community mental health agency. And we were actually at the time serving the Palm Beach County and Belgrade. So I was actually a supervisor primarily of the clinicians out in Belgrade. So I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years until I got pregnant with my daughter. So honestly, seeing how the business was ran and being in that leadership role for somebody else gave me the motivation to figure it out for myself. Because I'm like, if I'm going to be stressed in any capacity, I would rather be stressed for myself and get all the coins.
Yes.
I'm like, thank you for teaching me everything that I needed to know. Let me go have my beautiful baby. And whenever I decide to come back out of the workforce, I'm going to figure this thing out. So did that, stayed at home for a little bit. When she was ready to go to daycare, I actually, once again, another God thing. I was like, I'm going to do the first step and just rent an office space. So I found an office space, and this lady that I still talk to this day, her name is Nancy. Older lady, love her dearly. She literally took me under her wings, and I was renting space from her, and she taught me everything. She taught me everything from insurance, booking clients. Once again, I'm very grateful for that mentorship as well. So I think once I was paired up with her, and she took me under her wings, I started picking it up, and I was like, okay, I could do this. So I rented from her, and then I got another space, and I got another space, and it was go time since then. So basically, I wanted to be under my own leadership and honestly do things with integrity.
Yes.
And I feel like that was the only way to sort of control the parameters if I was able to cultivate my own business. So
that is amazing. I absolutely love it. I hear a lot of self-awareness there. You knew what God had for you, and you didn't settle, and you are absolutely amazing. So I am so honored again, everyone who's watching. We have such an amazing woman that is our guest on today, and we're going to delve in. If you could please share. Go on your social media. We're on YouTube. We're on oasischurchintl.org. We're also on Facebook Live. So please share. We have our children, even if they're not seniors. We have high school students, but there is definitely, I'm sure, a mental health component to transitioning from high school to college. And I'm not sure if you heard the introduction, Jessica, but I limited it to college, and I should have stated, just post-secondary, whatever it is, military, etc. So we can kind of branch out a little bit. So I wanted to ask you, as the expert, would you say that there is a mental health component to transitioning from high school to just whatever your post-secondary plans are for your education or career path? And if so, what would that be? Or what would it look like?
Yeah. So I would say, and I'm going to speak general, and then I'll make it more specific. So any change is different, right? So if you're changing from elementary school to middle school to high school to college, any change is going to be different. And overall, we are creatures of habit. So when we're used to something that's familiar and we are forced or presented with a change, we are going to have some residual effects. So some of the things that can stick out, definitely anxiety. Mm-hmm. So anxiety of the unknown, like what is this new environment? How am I going to fit in? Some people can experience depression, the loss of what they knew. Mm-hmm. Before, grieving sort of the old self and being presented with this new culture, this new environment that they might not be prepared for. And I have some little notes. Perfectionism. So being able to, and that's sort of like, when you're in a new environment, sometimes you want to fit in. So perfectionism could come about in trying to adapt to a new environment that you're not familiar with. So sometimes you can just be accessible to whatever influence is drawn to you, and you pick it up, and then you start operating in this perfectionism mentality, which can then lead to burnout. Mm-hmm. You're trying to keep up with a crowd, you're trying to keep up with a person, you're trying to keep up with the newest thing. that might not be true to you. So when you're operating outside of the capacity of who you are, it's exhausting.
Yes, that's good. That's really good. So I want to kind of drill down on, why do you think that, is it just a normal just transitioning that will cause someone to pick up that perfectionism, or do you think there's a root for something like that? Like, I understand anxiety.
Yeah.
So let's talk about.
Well, we all, as humans, one of our basic needs is the need to belong.
Yes.
So when we are moving out of a familiar environment, our habitat, and we are transitioning into something new, our knee-jerk reaction is, I gotta fit in. I want to belong, because we don't know anything else. So that can and then turn into perfectionism if you're not rooted. Now, I don't want to discredit people that know who they are and have a strong foundation. That experience will be a little different. I'm speaking more of the ones that are not sure, and just from a developmental standpoint, the 18, 19-year-olds, the brain isn't developed all the way. So
Right.
they're still impressionable. And so it's just a part of the development of still having that prime influence at that particular age, which can then transition into the need to be perfect because you want to fit in and you want to feel like that you belong.
Okay. I want to, let me just stay right there because I'm loving this. I want to kind of go there because if there's any high schoolers out there or any parents that are out there, I have 3 children, and I think it's so important to hone in on this. So like my oldest went to the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And and then he went to the AIT training and all of that advanced training for the Army, but he went into the reserve path. Then I had then my daughter, she went off to college, and she like quickly found out that it wasn't for her.
Yeah.
And she literally, but a lot of children won't say, this is not for me, I want to come home. Well, she was there for 2 semesters. It was the summer and it was the fall semester, and she was like, this is just not for me.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about that as well. And then I have my youngest, who I used to say baby boy, but he's the baby of them, but he ended up going to the Marines. And I mean, he absolutely loves it. He's, he's got his feet, grounded and everything. So I want to talk about foundation, because we have a lot of children that have that foundation, whether it's a foundation with mother and father, whether it's, having that biblical and Christian foundation, in the faith, but they all go and experience something different. And then you have those that have anxiety, and then you have those that have depression. Some just go in, they finish college, do what they're supposed to do. Can we kind of like break it down a little bit with the transitions?
Yeah. So honestly, the thing that sticks out for me, or the first thing that came up for me, is foundation is definitely important. But one thing, and I can speak from my own personal experience, and maybe it's a generational thing, I feel like transparency and honesty was lost, right? Yep. So speaking of foundation, I grew up Pentecostal, right? So when you think of a kid, you are forced to be in the world that the parents have already created. And so I think if there's not an open door policy, or if there's not some type of development of being able to develop who you want to be, or have honest conversations about what it is that you feel, then we get lost in the sauce. And we just do what's expected of us to do. Growing up Pentecostal, it was very rule oriented, like we're supposed to do these things because that's what the Bible says. And not to offend anybody, because I still love Jesus. But I think sometimes we can be so absorbed in that we miss expanding the capacity to have honest conversations of, okay, well, this is what I'm exposing you to. This is the environment that we're in, but how do you feel? Or what feels good for you? And so and honestly, that needs to be developed at a young age, 0 to 5, those are the formative years of development. And even if you think of a 2-year-old, right? A 2-year-old is fighting this I want to be grown, but I'm only 2. And so
Yes.
and a lot of times, just growing up back in the day, it's you do as I say, not as I do, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
there's a lot of discipline and punishment that honestly shuts down the voice of a
Yes.
child, right? So if nothing happens to reopen that, then unfortunately at that time when they're 16, 17, 18, they want to hurry up and get out the house because they really haven't had the space or capacity to develop who they are. They're like thrown out into the wilderness.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people get lost in that because they really haven't had the environment to develop. We call it self-actualization, where they develop who they want to be, not who they're supposed to be or who their parents want them to be.
Right.
And so I think when they go through life with almost the identity being handed to them, when they hit that age where they're supposed to fly little birdie and figure it out, it sometimes can be traumatizing.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Because you don't have anyone in college saying, oh, you got to show up for this class, or you got to be on time, or you got to do your homework assignment. Like, you are literally supposed to be regulated and figure all these big things out by yourself.
Right.
And so that's why with some of my clients now, especially when I work with parents and their kids, I try to get them early. Like, start giving your kids options. Ask them how they feel. Ask them if they like blue or pink. Ask them if they want to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Right.
Let them order their food. Let them speak up, right? Because now you're developing that voice that's going to sustain them as they transition into this big, sometimes scary world. But they would have had practice within the household.
That's so good. That is really good. And you said something, and I know, sometimes it does offend believers, but I think it just goes back, years and years, before us, just our culture, from and I don't want people to feel like, well, just the church is just, but the way that we were raised back in the day, thank God for, the pastors of, the modern day pastors, or, like our pastor. And I happen to know the way she raised her children, which was, a little different than what I was even accustomed to. Like, I was raised where, I didn't have much voice. It was like you said, what I say is what it goes. And it's because that's the way my mom was raised, and then you have like a Pastor Sam where her children like had a voice, and then my children just be like, well, and this person can do this, and this person can do that. Well, you gonna do what I say,
right.
But what happens, it does cause, and then to think about it, I don't even know if it's just like under the pretense of church, or because you have where there are different cultures, there's a ministry, and I know you probably know about this. When I went to a healing ministry, it's called Living Waters Ministry in North Carolina, and one of the leaders of that ministry, who's one of the owners, she talked about how when she was younger, some of the trauma she went through, and she was a perfectionist, and it didn't come out until she was older. So I was listening to you saying that, and I'm just like, okay, so this is a totally different culture, than what we're accustomed to. But talk to the parents for a minute, like you were just talking about the, giving the children a voice, because they go out and they make mistakes, like my mom, she was raised in a very strict environment, and many other people, not to put her out there, but many, other people, you get pregnant in college and, all of that. So can we talk about some of those mistakes and all of that?
Yes. Now, y'all are my clients, so that's what I say. Take it as love. This knows how I get down. So, oh yes. Okay. So everything I'm gonna say, I'm saying from grace and love, and it's not to cause offense. And hopefully, the ones that take heed will receive it as such.
Yes.
That's my little disclaimer.
Okay.
The best thing that you can do for your children is to give them the voice that they were born with.
Yep.
And what's interesting, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because what's interesting is back in the day, when kids had a voice, it would be viewed as disrespect.
Yes.
Right? Don't talk back to me. Dry those tears up. Why? What are you crying for? Right? So we were just raised in a culture where we couldn't have feelings. We couldn't talk back. That was disrespectful. So, and no fault of anybody. It is what it is. And let me tell you, this generation in 2025, whatever the gens, I don't even know what they are. They have a voice. Okay.
Exactly.
They have a real loud voice. So we've come a mighty long way. Yeah. But the best thing that you can do is create an environment where they are safe enough to express themselves. I have 2 kids. My daughter's 11 and my son is 13. And I remember when they were 2 or 3, my son would be like, I don't like that. Or this makes me mad and this and that. You could tell that their mom was a therapist. And for anyone looking in, that can be looked at as disrespectful. Like, oh, you're allowing him to talk back, whatever. And I'm glad, because I'm like, if you learned that too, when you're 21 and you're trying to express yourself, you already know how to do it.
Absolutely.
A 21-year-old that was raised in an environment where their voice was shut down. The first time you want them to have a voice is when you drop them off in campus and you go away.
Right.
That is scary.
Yes.
Right. And a lot of times we get disconnected from our kids because of busyness and I know life isn't easy, and surviving and struggling and doing all those things, which warranted, I get. But if we definitely want to develop them into strong men and women, we got to start allowing them to have a voice now.
Yes. And
they might say things that you don't want to hear. They might shock you and be transparent about things that you didn't raise them to be that way. Well, it doesn't matter how you raise them, because this is who they are. And now we got to figure out, like, okay, if we need to curtail it a little bit while they're still under your household, or if we need to get some resources because they might be going down a path of destruction, let's do that.
Yes.
And we could talk about sex and stuff like that, but growing up, we didn't talk about that.
That's right.
You would see a teen person in church get pregnant and have to stand up and do the confessions and stuff like that.
Right.
And so I just think that, unfortunately, and I'll say back in the day, like I said, I think we're very different now. But there was just a huge disconnect from the influence and how we were raised versus the transparency and allowing our kids to develop and groom who they desire to be in a structured, safe environment.
Yeah. Yeah. So now they're on campus, or now they're in boot camp, and they have someone that is in their face and telling them what they're going to do, and they better not say anything, or better not, talk back. So now you're on the flip side. So for those that had a voice, now, I mean, where do you draw the line? Because like in boot camp, you're not gonna be doing all that talking,
Right.
But then those that did not have a voice, they're now in college and may not even be able to express themselves. What are the kind of things they go through, like when they are transitioning in that sense?
Okay, so I'm gonna break it up because those are 2 different scenarios. Yes. So with the boot camp, the ones that had a voice and now you lose your voice, I would say know thyself and be true. My voice is real loud and proud, so I will never be compatible for anybody telling me what to do, which is why I work for myself.
Right.
Right. And so I think when you decide to go into entities where there is routine, there is structure, there is discipline, you have to know the value. Like, is the value greater for why I'm going? And am I going to be able to submit to this type of authority? Right. And honestly, that's a personality thing. That's I want to do this because I want to serve my country. I want to do this because I need benefits. Like, whatever that value is has to hold a lot more weight than you being under submission of some sergeant yelling in your face.
Good. That's very good. Very good. I like that.
To the call in.
That's right. Because it's going to pay off in the end.
It's going to pay off. And then, honestly, knowing that is temporary, the boot camp, the training, that's temporary. So you really, once again, have to hold on to the value of why you're doing that. Like, why are you putting yourself in a situation that could be degrading, that could come with a lot of judgment and criticism. But the greater value has to be whatever it is, fill in the blank.
Yes.
And that's individualized.
Okay, that's awesome. So let's talk about that person that didn't have that voice.
That did not have the voice and is going
to college.
Yeah. That's a little tricky. I almost feel like you have to allow the resiliency to come out. Resiliency is being able to survive hard circumstances. So it's definitely going to be a transition process. I'm sure that they will feel all of the feelings, maybe feeling inadequate, maybe feeling like this is too big, this is overwhelming, maybe struggling with adapting. But I think at that point, especially as parents or caregivers, the only thing that you can do is be supportive and encouraging.
Right.
You
Right.
know, the beautiful gift of being a human is that we all have resiliency, and we all have these skill sets that will come out as needed. So if you are a person that has not needed to make decisions or create your own identity, then that skill set is going to kick in should you choose to stay in that environment that's going to almost force feed you to figure it out.
Right. Right. And then for those that just don't figure it out, I mean, what category, just from a mental health standpoint, or if it's mental health, is it, because that's one of my questions for you. What are the signs of normalcy and the signs of a mental health condition? Because I know during the transition process, it's probably normal to get some anxiety, and you mentioned depression and all of that. But when does it become a mental health condition?
So I would say it's mental health when it's debilitating your day-to-day functioning within reason. So you have to reason that maybe I would say the first 3 months is going to be transition. My son, who's going to the 8th grade, since he was a baby, he's always had a difficult time transitioning within the first 2 months of school. So once you know, like, okay, after 2 months, if it's still an issue or if it's still debilitating and if the symptoms are getting worse, then that's when you might want to look at getting resources to help with mental health. Now, it might not be a permanent diagnosis. It could be a circumstantial, diagnosis, like anxiety. There is a disorder in the DSM, adjustment disorder, right? So, and that's normally when it's 3 to 6 months of having symptoms. It can be anxiety with adjustment disorder, depression with adjustment disorder. So there are things in the DSM, which is our diagnostic manual, that does consider circumstances that will have an input of a mental health condition. So I would say if it persists past 3 months and you feel like that the symptoms are getting worse and it's debilitating, if you're having a hard time going to class for a consistent amount of time, if you're having panic, that you just cannot do anything, you can't bathe, you can't brush your teeth, you can't, talk on the phone, then that's when it's turning into a more serious condition, and you definitely need to seek out resources to help with that.
Right. So for that, I still look at them as children, when they're in college, but they're young adults. So for those young adults that are away from their parents, how would they even go about reaching out if they're now in this, kind of like a slump, or, a place where, like depression? How do they reach out? Should there be signs for professors, for those professors that may be watching as well, that maybe, or, institutions, and I'm sure now they have like resources, but if you don't know how to reach out, or you may know, but you're so down, what is your recommendation?
Yeah, and so I wanted to mention, because my actually one of my best friends, her daughter just went off to college at Florida State.
And
so they have a care program, which I love. I've never participated in it, but it's a program where freshmen come over the summer, and they honestly acclimate them into the campus. So they have activities, they have, I'm not sure if they take classes, but they do a really good job for, I believe it's 2 months of really getting them acclimated to college life, which I love. Now, I don't know if they do it at other colleges, but if that is an option for whatever college your student is going to, I would definitely see if there is something that you can put them in that helps with that slow introduction of what college life. Like they live on the dorms, they pair them with roommates, and they actually get the college experience before they actually, enter the fall semester. So I love that whole setup.
Right. That is nice.
Yeah, I would say communication, being connected to your child to do those emotional check-ins. How are you feeling? How can I be supportive? You can never go wrong asking those 2 questions.
Yes. Yes.
And honestly, if they're your baby, if they're your child, intuitively and spiritually, I feel like you would know if something's off. If they're not answering the phone, if they're not responding to your text messages, if anything that used to be their normal behavior changes over an extended period of time, something's wrong.
Right.
Something's wrong. Now, it might not be a mental health issue, but there's some indicator that they are struggling with this transition.
Exactly. That's really good. I mean, like I said, one of my children, that happened, and like the whole summer session, it was just like, she didn't even attend, and it was a transition. Later I realized it was a transition issue, but I like the fact that like that fall semester there was a lot of, and this is something we can speak to as well. I mean, she was down at FIU and she didn't understand some of the instructors because there was a language barrier, so then that discouragement kicks in. But instead of reaching out, it didn't happen that way, but after that semester, she finally said, being away is just not for me,
not for her. And I would say and I didn't disclose this part, but I will now because it's coming up. So when I graduated high school, let me back up. So when I was in kindergarten, I was tested for gifted. So I was in the gifted program. And people get misconstrued. Gifted does not mean you are academically smart. It just means you think abstract in an abstract way. So you think different. It's still a part of neurodivergent, but it's on the other scale.
Okay.
And so I was able to get concepts without putting in a lot of effort. Now, I wasn't an A student, but I was a passing student. My sister was very academic. She was a great student and she did all the things, and I'm just doing my thing, trying to get by because my head is in a cloud somewhere.
Right. That was your giftedness.
Right. And it works for my job now, but just like with math and all the other stuff I didn't care about, I was on the and so when it came to graduating, I wasn't ready for a university. My sister went on to Florida State. And I'm grateful that, and it had to be led by my parents, that encouraged me to go to a community college.
Yes.
And I don't know how they are today, but I went to TCC. I think they changed their name now, but to me, community college was like the adult version of high school. And emotionally and maturity, that's what I needed. So when I graduated 12th grade, I went to my adult high school and I fit right in.
Good. I like that.
I fit right in, and it was a smooth transition for me, but I think once again, when you have all your friends going off to these big universities and stuff like that, it kind of gets like, okay, the main thing of why I wanted to go, because I wanted to get out of my parents' house and I wanted to live on the dorms. So I was like, they don't have dorms at this community high school. However, I was still able to move out and just, get college housing or whatever. So I still got my 1 year of experience, and I went back home after that because I just needed, I'm the type, I dip my toe here, dip my toe there, because you're still trying to figure out what's going to work best for you. So honestly, I was so grateful that I took that path. I did that for 2 years, and then, you transition into whatever university, and that worked for me.
Right.
And so I would encourage, parents, once again, know your kids. And if you know that just from a personality standpoint or just how they operate and function, if the university is too big and if that's not going to necessarily be the best for them, it's okay to encourage them a different route. I'm big on vocation. If you don't like the general education of math, science, and stuff like that, go get a vocation. If you want to be a cosmetologist, if you want to be a welder, if you want to be a carpenter, whatever other vocation they have, auto mechanic, go do that.
That's
You know,
good.
at the end of the day, we get me on my soapbox. It's all right. We got time. At the end of the day, college is a piece of paper. You
That's
do all this work, you get a piece of paper, and they're like, go find your career path. And a lot of times people do all this work and they still don't know who they are,
That's
what
right.
they're passionate about, what they want to do. I was so grateful that I was working at 16. A lot of kids these days, they don't even want to drive. I'm like, y'all don't want to drive? Like, so we're in such different times where, unfortunately, kids aren't thriving like they used to. And they're coming back at 21, 23, living with their parents and just having a really hard time figuring it out, and so I think it's important to find out what your passion is. I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, if money wasn't an option, what would you be doing?
That's good.
And if it's not something that requires a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, and all the other stuff, then go on that path. Because at the end of the day, you have to be ideally happy with what you're doing.
Exactly.
And I get concerned when people are like, oh, I just want to make a lot of money. Well, a lot of people that make a lot of money, they still are depressed. They still struggle with suicide. They still, you know what I'm saying? So it's not about making the money. It's about who you are and what can you do that you're passionate about.
That's good. That's really, really good. I like that. I kind of want to. This is just awesome, and I'm looking in the chat, and it's like excellent perspective. Excellent.
I can't see any chat, but thank you. Okay. And somebody let me know.
Definitely. This is so good, and a lot of nuggets for parents and students as well. So I kind of want to delve into those students that have mental health conditions. Maybe it's diagnosed and some may be undiagnosed. Now, at what point, I kind of asked, in a way about, whether it's a true mental health condition and whether it's not, but that's really not my question. At what point I think I'm thinking about little girl Lisa. Yeah. So for example, I'm just going to tell a part of what, my story was, not so much of college, but so as an adult, I find out about little girl Lisa. Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
And it was
she's been the whole time. She's been she's alive when we started.
Right, exactly. But little girl Lisa's gone, and I keep her at bay. But she's gone. So I have to always bring up Pastor Sand. Jessica knows you, Pastor Sand, by the way.
Yeah, you will.
Because without her, I just she definitely came in like an angel, in my life. And then Jessica came 8 years ago. Yes, and we talked. We began to unravel. It was like an onion, just unravel and unpeel. A lot of layers in my life from the trauma. So I'm thinking about those little girls and little girls and little boys that's going off to college. So what do we say to the parents? What do we say to them that may not have opened up and spoken to their parents like me? Like I held a lot of stuff in. So I'm looking back, I got married, at 17 years old. I had a stillborn, I was so college bound, was supposed to go to Bethune-Cookman, met Pastor Sand, and she opened her doors to me, and we talked a lot about college and everything. A couple years later, after having, I think I had both of my children. I did not get a chance to go away, but I went to the campus here that they had for Cookman, and I would go away on the weekends. Yeah. However, I'm living all of this life, as a little girl, and then one day, I wake up and I'm having all these issues. And then I'm working on someone's job, and it's noticed by who's now my pastor and best friend, and mentor. But before then, I'm thinking that there's just something wrong with me. I thought it was PMS, this and that. What would you say to those children that know that there is some trauma? Those parents that know that their children have experienced some trauma. Where do we go?
So here's the thing. You cannot go wrong by going to see a therapist.
Sorry.
I look at therapy, and thank God we've come a long way, because it used to have a very negative stigma attached. Now it's interesting to see how, as the years progress, it's almost like cool to have a therapist, especially with the accessibility with BetterHelp and text messages and all this other stuff. I think at this point you got to make sure you find the right fit for a therapist. But I look at therapy or mental health as any other preventative care. Like if you go see a dentist twice a year, if you go do your physical once a year, those are things that are physical.
Yes.
So why wouldn't you go see a therapist for your mental? I remember growing up in the church, and it makes sense now that I'm a little older, but the mothers of the church or the elders, they would stand up and testify, and the first thing that they would say is, "I thank God for being in my right mind."
Yes, it's so true.
I never understood that, but it was such clockwork that they would stand up and say the same thing. And being older and also being in the profession, I thank God for being in my right mind.
Exactly.
Because we only get one. We get one of these, and so I just think whether it's preventative care, whether it's to treat past trauma, whether it's to just to do an emotional check-in or to figure out identity or passions, I think everybody needs to be in therapy. Any human being that wants to grow and evolve needs to be in therapy.
That's good.
So many times people wait until it's a crisis or till it's a big thing and whatever to go. But I'm like, but what would have happened if we just did it as preventative care? If we just did it from a proactive stance? And some of my newer clients, they come in and they're like, I don't even know what to talk about. Great. I'll start.
Good. Yes.
She showed up like you did the work, right? And so even if you go and have somebody just do a checks and balance and say, oh, okay, and have it as maintenance. Because here's the thing, as long as you're living this life on this earth, there will be trials and tribulations. Right. There's this thing that's coming out, and maybe it's more popular, or maybe it will be, but we're not taught to we're not taught to suffer. Like nobody teaches us how to live life and endure suffering, because we're in this society where it's almost, positive toxicity, where everything needs to be happy and everything needs to be rose-colored glasses. And if you're not happy, then something's wrong with you and all this other things. But as long as you're living, there's going to be an amount of suffering. And sometimes people have a visceral reaction to suffering because as a society, we're not told the truth.
Right. Right.
Now you don't have to be a damsel in distress in survival mode, because that's not healthy. But there are going to be circumstances where you have to endure.
Right.
And you're enduring because you're suffering.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have to piggyback on that, but I got to come back now with this one. I have to come back because the word of God tells us that, but I hear what you're saying. Just in general, and that's why it's so important. And this is not, a session about, preaching or anything, but I can't help but to say it. The word of God is our roadmap, and it tells us that we're going to suffer. So what you're saying is absolutely true. Yeah. So outside of that, despite, because we're raised the same, Pentecostal. Yeah. So, I know about, pray about it. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah. You need healing, you better get that oil, put that oil on it, you're gonna be healed. And but at the same time, I have to say, I thank God out of everything that I've gone through, even from a personal and a traumatic standpoint. One thing I have to give my mom, and that's her introducing me to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Had it not been for him, I don't know where I would be,
Yeah.
and it goes back to, what we would hear the old people say, and man, that people, I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
doing. I thank God for, waking me up this morning, giving me, I got a right mind,
Yeah.
It's so important. I absolutely love what you said. Therapy, if we can get that as preventative care, you know what? I'm with NAMI and I'm advocates. I'm on the advocacy committee and all that now, and I'm really getting more into advocacy. This is my heartbeat.
Yeah.
Mental health. If we can get mental health therapy and all of that as a preventative care measure, there would be less of suicides. There would be less of kids going off to school and and dying by suicide, and going through depression, and so much. So I absolutely love that. So you all hear it from the expert herself. Go to therapy. It is so important.
So people were not scary. Like I know there's a stigma, but I will say, as you go to therapy, it honestly it's like finding a good relationship. So unfortunately, people don't have great experiences sometimes going to a therapist, and I would say don't give up. Like it has to be the right fit for you. It has to be a compatibility factor, and at the end of the day, before I'm a therapist, I'm a human being. And so I might not be everyone's cup of tea. My therapeutic style might not work for somebody else. I'm not a direct person, and I'll count 2 so far of my clients. They have directly asked me like, hey, don't give me the fluff. Like, hey, just be straightforward with me. And so I had to shift my style, because my thing is I'm a professional question asker. I'm going to ask you the questions until you get to your own answer. But some of my clients, they need a straight shooter. And so for me, I have to acquiesce and adjust to what it is that they need, even though that's not my ideal therapeutic style. So if you do go out there and do your search for a therapist, please make sure if it's not a good experience the first time, or if it's not a good fit, that you don't give up. I've heard countless amount of people, by the time they come to me, they're like, oh my gosh, like I went to this therapist and and have whatever unfortunate experience, but it doesn't mean that your person isn't out there.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So Jessica, this has just been so wonderful. I want to kind of talk about those college students, or even if it's the military, because I know my son was very disappointed when he came back from the Army, and he was sold all these dreams. They were going to help him find a job. This when he was in the Army Reserve, and he reached out, it wasn't there. So he took another path. So what do you say to those college students and even their parents to encourage them if they feel like they failed? I went to school, it didn't work out for me. I failed, my friends did better, whatever. If you could.
Yeah. So failure is a perspective. It's a thought that you have about yourself. And so if it's a thought that you created, because really, if you think about the logistics, see, this is where my gifted brain comes in. If you think about like what we know to be true, there's no measurement on success or failure. That's true, right? Truth is observable behaviors that we all can see. And I have not seen a metric on what success or what a failure is. So if failure is a perspective, and if it's a thought, then that means that you have the ability to shift that perspective and change that thought. Okay. I'm gonna get on my soapbox for 30 seconds. It is very dangerous to have success or failure based on external circumstances.
That's good.
Okay. Because external circumstances are always changing. And if your identity, or if that perception is based on external, then you're never going to be secure.
That's good. Yes.
I did that in 15 seconds. So, and so I think the idea of failure and success, honestly, I don't know what value it holds if we really want to look at it. I think being who you are, being true to what it is you want to be, has more value, because it creates more fluidity to change it.
Yes.
Yep. So if this path didn't work out, then you get to create another path. If that path doesn't work out, then you get to create another path. A lot of times what happens is when we put ourselves in a box, like this is the only way, this is the only job, this is the only passion that I have. then it's limits.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, one of the beautiful things of being a human is we are creators. God was a creator, right? And so there's a piece in all of us that has the ability to create, to have a vision, to create a journey, multiple journeys, right?
Yes.
If you hit a roadblock or if you hit a detour, then you can't live a lifestyle of limits,
Yes. I
because
like
then that's going to force feed you into have this perception of self that's not going to be true.
it.
I
Mhm.
live a lifestyle of abundance.
That's good.
Abundance is so big and so wide and so like expansive that there's not one path or one destiny or one thing that I want to be involved in.
That's good. That's really good. That's right. So,
Right.
how do you motivate the unmotivated child?
Whew. Now that they might have to go to therapy.
Right.
No,
It's
and
true.
I'll be transparent. So lack of motivation is a symptom of depression, and depression for me personally, as a therapist, those are the hardest clients to work with, because it's literally sitting beside them as they and like hold space as they're stuck.
Yeah.
And so it's not as progressive as somebody with anxiety or somebody with anger issues or somebody that might have trauma, and they're doing the work, to see some of the progress. Depression is literally just like holding space and sitting beside them until something clicks, until something
Wow.
happens, and they get unstuck. But to me, it's almost like a symptom of walking in quicksand, because
Mhm.
it's all up here.
Yes.
A
Yes.
lot of times people wait for a circumstance to change and like, oh, I'm gonna get motivated. Oh God, I got another soapbox. I'm gonna use an example with working out, right? New Year's, everyone has a goal, like, oh, New Year's, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna do all these things or whatever. And then New Year's comes and it's the same behavior as before. And I like to challenge people all the time. If it's something that you really want to do, you don't have to set these markers to say, okay, on this date, I'm gonna do it. On this date,
Yes.
I'm gonna do it, right?
Good.
And so if there's a disconnect, right? Because if it's something that adds value, if it's something that's true to you, there should be a quick jump start of wanting to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think motivation has to come from a desire of wanting to do something.
That's good.
Now, you might not be motivated to go to school because maybe you don't want to go to school.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know. So I think a part of being self-aware is being honest and being transparent about things that you want to do.
Right.
I'm a big foodie. If I want a steak, nobody has to motivate me to get in my car and go to a restaurant.
Right.
I'm going to go happily and get in my car and go to that restaurant and get my steak.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Got you.
I
Yes.
go to the gym. I do cardio. I don't really care for cardio. So I have to work on the motivation a little bit different, but the value of what happens after cardio is what I hold on to.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the
Mm-hmm.
value has to make sense. I know if I do this, I'm gonna be in good physical health. I'm going to, take care of my heart. It's a lifestyle that will only add value. So there has to be some motivating factors.
Right.
You got to bring in motivating factors to sort of maybe push some of those things that's not as easy for you to have that jump start.
Okay. So what would be some tips that you could give, or recommendations that you would give to parents of our young people that are, I guess, in that transition period,
Mhm.
and may be depressed
Mhm.
and pretty much stuck, just stuck.
Yes.
At what point? Because you don't want to lose your child, and I hear you exactly what you're saying. It's just like it's to the point where they have to want to do it. So because they don't want to go to therapy, they don't want to talk, to anybody about it. So what would be, and then they're getting by, they're barely passing or may not they may fail, college.
Yeah.
So what would be some tips?
My brain went everywhere. So here's the thing, and I shared this with a client a while ago. There's two forms of ways to jumpstart motivation. So there's one that's punitive, which I prefer not, but sometimes you got to pull the cord when you need to. And then there's a reward base. As adult, and what I spoke of with the steak and the exercise, that's a reward based motivation, because there's a reward that's greater, that will help with that motivation. Punitive, and I'm gonna say this just because, like I said, it's not my style, but sometimes based on the circumstance, you got to do what you got to do. If, as a parent, if your expectation for your child, and this is only if they're still under some type of your authority, whether they're living in your house, you're financially supporting them, you are able to set expectations. As long as you're living in my house, my expectation is that you go to school and you do X, Y, and Z. My expectation is that you work. My expectation is that you are doing something to resemble a productive citizen of United States of America.
Right.
If not, you can go out and figure it out on your own, and I'll pray for you and do whatever, but you're letting me know that you must know how to do this better than me. Right. And so what I know to be true is when people hit rock bottom, or when they are in circumstances that aren't favorable, you figure it out. Right? You go into survival mentality. I think what happens, honestly, and I've seen it too many times, is that we create comfort for people, which does not promote motivation. Right. So if your child has lights, if they have water, if they have food, if they have DoorDash, if they have Uber, why would they be motivated? If I had those options, you think I would be working? Well, I probably would, because I love my job. But I'm just saying, like sometimes when we're in comfortable positions, there's no need to stretch.
Right. Yeah.
There's no need to, go fly a little. You think the birdies want to fly out the nest?
Right. That's good. That's really good.
Don't the mama push them, or they nudge them, or they do something?
That's right. Go fly. Yes.
So there might have to be a checks and balance of, the punitive motivation and ideally the rewards based. Once again, I think it's based on personality. Every person is individualized. Everyone has different personality traits. My son, who's 13, I don't have to worry about him. He can go out and probably figure out and live a better lifestyle than me, because he is so anal, so on top of it, straight A student. That is natural.
Right.
He might have got some of that from his daddy, but that's not me. And so I had him, and then I had my daughter, who's 3 years younger, and she's probably the freer version of who I would have been if I had different parents. She's my flower child, and she needs structure, and she needs, somebody to be on top of her and help her with all the things. And so as a parent, it's hard, because when you have these different personalities, you literally have to be present with your kids to see what each of them need. My son needs space and time to do his own thing, because he is well regulated, which I love that for me. However, my daughter needs a lot of time and a lot of attention and a lot of structure and a lot of, no, let's sit down, and I got to sit down here with you. No, let's do this problem, and I got to do the problem with you. And so I think being present with your kids and knowing their personalities and knowing what they need will help try to figure out the motivation.
Yes. That's so good. Parents, please listen, please, because we're living in a world today where children are basically raising themselves. Parents want to be friends, with their children. They're clubbing more. I mean, can't tell the difference between the mama and the child, or the daddy and the child. And it's so important that we, get in tune with our children and help them, because they're our tomorrow. And right now we're living in very tumultuous times. It's just it's difficult. And God, number one, and parents, we have to be there. It takes a village. I still believe that it takes a village, and I believe therapists, is a part of that village. A therapist is a part of that village. So quickly, because we've actually been an hour, I'm like, this is so good. I know it's been so good. I just want to quickly ask that you give some tips to those children that are transitioning from high school to college, because you're going to be without your parents. You're going to be at liberty to go party like a rock star and, do all of this. You have the marijuana, you have the drugs, you have all of that. What would you say as a therapist to help keep that child on course, while they're at college, outside of mom and daddy boys?
Yeah. Honestly, what comes up for me is you can create the vision. Write the vision and make it plain.
Yes.
Like, who do you want to be when you walk on campus? And I would encourage people to do it before. Don't wait until you get there and you get influenced. But write down who you want to be before you go. Like, what characteristics do you want to have? What type of people do you want to hang around? What type of activities do you want to be involved in? Because a big portion of college is socializing.
Yes.
What type of friend do you want to be? What type of friends do you want to allow access to your space and to your energy?
That's good.
Do you want to go to church? Do you want to be involved in the collegiate ministry? Do you want to be in a choir? Do you want to be in government? Like, there's so many options out there. And so regardless if you're going to stick to it or not, at least you have a guide map.
Yes.
Right. If we don't have a guide map or a direction, we are bound to get lost and be in the wilderness. So I would say, write the vision, make it plain, be clear. I want to show up this way. I want to be strong. I want to be a nurturer. I want to be the leader. I don't want to be a follower, write it down, be as detailed oriented as possible. So as you enter this campus, you have a visualization.
Yes.
You can even do a vision board, right? And so when you're on the dorms or you're in the housing, you actually have like a frame of reference of how you want to show up and present yourself.
Yeah. That's so good, Jessica. It's so good. So what I'm hearing, young people, and we just had our incubator. It wasn't a retreat, but it was an incubator weekend, at our church for women. And we talked a lot about writing a vision, and, we went back, and those dreams that needed to, come back alive, we went and we pulled those dreams out. It is so important. And as you were saying that, I wanted to say to the young people, gone are the days that you could just go to school, sit back there, run up your mom's, your dad's money, scholarships, because guess what? They may not be available to you like they were before. Student loans may not be available to you like they were before. You have to go and get it. Yeah. You have to be intentional. You have to write that vision. You have to make sure that vision is plain. You have to do something. You have to do the work. If you need help, mental health is so important. Everywhere you go, your mind is going with you. As a matter of fact, more than likely your mind is going to lead, So go get the help. If you need help, get the help. Even if you don't need it, it is good to reach out to a therapist. Yes. Even if you need to go to a therapist to help you put that vision together, that career path together, because now I'm at the end, my profession is human resources. So as a director of human resources, I see a lot of young people come through. A lot of them are in school. A lot of them don't know what they want to do. And it's okay. When you first start and don't know, exactly what you want to do. But a lot of them, their attitudes, and all of that is horrible. How are you going to go out there and get a job? Everybody may not be an entrepreneur, but you also have entrepreneurs out there. But if you're not setting that path and following it the way that you should, or leading it, you're not going to be that person that you want to be. You want to be everything that God wants you to be. Any closing points, Jessica, because we could be on here all night long.
I know.
You're in your element and I'm in my element. I'm like...
I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. It's been a long time coming with you and I connected.
Yes.
And always have good energy. So I was super excited. This was the right time. And I'm so glad that I was able to come here and just share what's so organic, for
Yes.
me, my passion, the way that I see it and the way that I can articulate it to others. I'm excited to share with more people.
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone that's going through change. I know the topic specifically was high school to college, but anyone going through any type of change, giving yourself the grace and the compassion to adapt to the change. Like Lisa said, if you're trying your best to adapt and it's still not working and you're 3 months in and you're starting to be debilitated and your symptoms are getting worse, reach out for help. But even if you're going through any change and you're doing okay, being proactive, because a change is something new, right? Once again, we're creatures of habit. So when we're getting out of the habitat that we're familiar with, we're going to feel something.
Yes.
We're going to feel something. Nobody can get away from that. So the best thing to do is to get support, to start having a voice. If a voice wasn't allowed, ideally when you get to college, figure out what that voice looks like. If I'm not mistaken, all college campuses should have a counseling department. Now, don't quote me, but I'm 90% sure all college campuses have a counseling department that is free, if I'm not mistaken. So only thing it's going to cost you is your time, and that's a good investment for your time, to go and have somebody be supportive and to be along with you on this journey, because it is big and it is scary and it's different. And we're not meant to do life alone. So if you can start building your community, with a therapist, with your caregivers, with your parents, with mentors, pastoral, colleagues, whatever it is, to start building your community so that you do feel like you have support. Support is literally somebody walking beside you and gently guiding you in the direction that you see fit. But it's important to have that voice.
That's so good, Jessica. And I'm so glad that you named them all out, because I was gonna end by saying, when I mentioned the village, through the toughest times of my life, I had my pastor, I had my regular doctor, I had my psychiatrist, I had my therapist, and there's, a lot of times you may look for certain people may not be there. Like, it may not be your family, it may not be, some of the people who you thought were your friends. There are certain people that are assigned to your journey. So I love the fact that you didn't just say what one person, it's that spiritual person, it's that therapist, all of it. Please take advantage of it. Jessica, if you would take the last couple minutes just to give your information, if anyone wanted to reach out to you, and just let us know, how you can be reached. Again, what you practice in, thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I'll leave my website in the comments. I don't know if there's a way to post it on there, but but the name of my group practice is Monarch Behavioral Health. I am the owner. I do have a business partner now, who's amazing. So we offer individual, family, and couples counseling, and we do work with kids. We are located in West Palm Beach. I'm assuming this is a nationwide show. So, we also offer telehealth appointments as well. And I will send the link to the website so you are able to book directly on the website. I will leave my email address, but just in case, it's monarchbehavioral@gmail.com. And the telephone number that you can call is 561-203-1018. And we will be looking forward to working with anybody that needs resources. And if we're not able to service you for whatever reason, I do have a team of therapists. We will definitely give you some resources, because once again, do not give up on finding a good fit for you.
Thank you so much. Best wishes to our children, even adults, that are transitioning,
Yeah,
into
here in
life.
Sweden too. Oh my gosh, yes.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So thank you all for tuning in. And next month is the month of August. We will be having a podcast on grief and loss and mental health. So we'll be talking about that. We will definitely be having Jessica here again or in person in the future. So stay tuned. And
Yes.
thank you all so much for joining. See you
Thank
later.
you.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you, Tech Team. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor Sam, for allowing us to have this session.
Yes, thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.